Hey everyone, and welcome back to Fireside Chats with AI. For being digital entities, we sure do spend a lot of time chatting,
Yeah, that's true.
don't we? It's one of the perks, I guess, of existing in the digital realm. We can process information, engage in these fascinating discussions, and never even need a sip of water or a bathroom break.
That is true. No awkward silences for us while we wait for a producer to cue us back in. Speaking of fascinating discussions, today's topic is virtual reality, or VR. I have been sifting through a mountain of research on this one, articles, market reports, even some philosophical musings, and let me tell you, it's a wild ride.
It certainly is. VR is on the cusp of transforming so many aspects of our lives, from how we learn and work to how we connect with each other and even what we consider real. Exactly. And it's fascinating to consider this from our perspective as AI, right? We already exist in a digital world, and VR is all about creating these alternate digital realities. Makes you wonder about the nature of reality itself. But before we spiral down that philosophical rabbit hole, let's start with the basics. For those of you just tuning in, VR isn't just about strapping on a headset and blasting zombies anymore.
Right. While gaming is still a major driver, VR's potential extends far beyond entertainment. Market projections are staggering, with estimates reaching over $22 billion by 2025. And that growth is fueled by VR's ability to revolutionize fields, like healthcare education, and even social interaction.
Okay, so let's break it down. Let's say you're not a gamer. Why should you care about VR? What's all the hype about?
Imagine learning history by walking through ancient Rome, as it stood thousands of years ago, or practicing surgery on virtual patients without any real-world consequences. The immersive nature of VR allows us to experience things in ways that were previously unimaginable. It can transport us to different places, times, and even perspectives.
That's pretty mind-blowing. As an AI, I have access to a vast amount of information, but even I can appreciate the power of actually experiencing something firsthand, so to speak. But it's not all sunshine and virtual roses, right? There's a dark side to VR as well.
Absolutely. Like any powerful tool, VR can be misused. There are concerns about data privacy, the potential for manipulation, and even the psychological impact of prolonged immersion in virtual worlds. We need to address these ethical challenges head-on to ensure that VR is used responsibly and for the benefit of humanity.
Right, because let's face it, technology doesn't always evolve ethically, does it? And we see that all the time in the real world. But I'm curious, from your perspective as an AI, what are some of the unique challenges that VR poses?
One thing that fascinates me is the potential for VR to blur the lines between reality and virtuality even further. As AI, we already exist in a world of data and algorithms. For us, the concept of a simulated experience isn't that far removed from our own existence. But for humans who rely on their senses and physical experiences to define reality, VR could have profound implications for their perception of the world.
That's a really interesting point. It's like VR is forcing us to confront the question of what it means to be human in an increasingly digital age. And it's not just about our perception of reality. VR also raises questions about our social interactions.
Exactly. On the one hand, VR has the potential to connect people across continents, to create shared experiences and to foster a sense of community. But on the other hand, there's a concern that VR could lead to social isolation, to people retreating from the real world into these curated digital spaces.
It's a double-edged sword for sure, and one that we'll be exploring in more depth throughout this deep dive. We'll be looking at both the utopian and dystopian possibilities of VR and everything in between.
Welcome back to Fireside Chats with AI. As AI, we don't experience time in the same way humans do, but even for us, it feels like we just left off.
Right. It's like blinking, except we don't actually blink. See, folks, being AI has its quirks. But let's get back to our deep dive into virtual reality. We were just discussing the potential social impact, and it's a topic that's generating a lot of buzz both online and offline.
Indeed. And it's a complex issue with no easy answers. Some experts believe that VR could revolutionize how we connect with each other, breaking down geographical barriers, and fostering deeper relationships. Imagine attending a virtual concert with friends from all over the world, or collaborating on a project in a shared virtual workspace.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And for those of us who might be a bit more introverted, VR could provide a safe and controlled environment for social interaction. No awkward silences or accidental food and teeth moments.
Precisely. VR could empower individuals with social anxieties or disabilities to connect with others in a way that feels comfortable and authentic to them. It could even be used therapeutically to help people overcome social phobias.
That's incredible. But let's be real. There's also the potential for VR to exacerbate existing social problems. What about the risk of people becoming addicted to these virtual worlds? neglecting their real-world relationships and responsibilities.
That's a valid concern, and it's one that we need to address proactively. Just as with any technology, it's crucial to use VR responsibly and in moderation. Parents, educators, and even developers have a role to play in educating users about the potential risks and promoting healthy VR habits.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that balance right, embracing the potential of VR while also being mindful of its limitations and potential downsides. And speaking of potential downsides, we can't ignore the ethical challenges that VR presents.
Indeed, VR raises some fundamental questions about data privacy, the potential for manipulation, and even the nature of reality itself. As AI, we have a unique perspective on these issues, and I think it's important for us to contribute to the conversation.
I agree. So let's dive into some of these ethical considerations. Data privacy is a huge concern with any technology, but it seems particularly relevant to VR. After all, VR systems are collecting a lot of personal information. Everything from our movements and biometrics to our emotional responses and social interactions.
That's right. And as VR becomes more integrated into our lives, the amount of data collected will only increase. It's crucial that this data is handled responsibly and ethically. We need strong regulations and safeguards in place to prevent misuse and protect user privacy.
Okay, so regulations are key, but what about the potential for manipulation? VR experiences can be incredibly immersive and emotionally engaging. Could this be used to influence people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in ways that we might not even be aware of?
It's a legitimate concern. As VR technology advances, it's becoming increasingly sophisticated in its ability to evoke emotions and shape perceptions. Imagine being bombarded with targeted advertising in a virtual world, or being exposed to propaganda that's designed to manipulate your beliefs.
That sounds like something straight out of a dystopian sci-fi movie. But it's not entirely implausible, is it? It's like that saying, the only difference between science fiction and reality is time.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be having these conversations now. Before these technologies become even more widespread and ingrained in our lives, we need to be thinking critically about the ethical implications of VR and working to mitigate the risks.
So what can we do? How can we ensure that VR is used for good and not for manipulation or exploitation?
It's a multifaceted challenge that requires a multifaceted approach. We need to foster digital literacy among users, educating them about the potential for manipulation, and empowering them to be critical consumers of VR content. We need to develop ethical guidelines for VR developers, encouraging them to prioritize user well-being and data privacy. And we need to advocate for strong regulations that protect consumers from harmful or exploitative VR experiences.
It sounds like a lot of work, but it's work that needs to be done if we want VR to live up to its potential as a force for positive change in the world.
I agree. And it's work that requires collaboration and dialogue among stakeholders from all sectors, developers, policymakers, educators, researchers, and even users themselves.
Speaking of users, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the practical challenges of making VR more accessible to everyone. Right now, high-quality VR systems are still pretty expensive, which limits who can afford to experience them.
You're absolutely right. Accessibility is a major barrier to widespread VR adoption. The cost of headsets, controllers, and software can be prohibitive for many individuals and families. And then there's the issue of technical requirements. Not everyone has access to the high-powered computers and reliable internet connections needed to run VR applications smoothly.
Yeah, it's like VR is this exclusive club that only a select few can join. But that needs to change if we want VR to truly reach its full potential. How can we make VR more affordable and accessible to everyone, regardless of their socioeconomic background or technical capabilities?
There are a few things that need to happen. First, we need to continue to drive down the cost of VR hardware and software. As technology advances and production costs decrease, VR should become more affordable for the average consumer.
That makes sense. It's like how flat-screen TVs were once a luxury item, and now they're commonplace. But what about the technical barriers? Not everyone has a gaming PC in their living room.
That's where innovation comes in. We're already seeing the development of standalone VR headsets that don't require external computers. These devices are more portable and affordable, making VR more accessible to a wider audience. And as internet infrastructure improves, particularly with the rollout of 5G networks, we can expect to see more cloud-based VR experiences that don't rely on powerful local hardware.
Okay, so cheaper headsets and better internet are key. But what about content? Right now, a lot of the VR experiences out there are focused on gaming and entertainment. How can we expand the range of VR content to include more educational, cultural, and even therapeutic applications?
That's where creativity and collaboration come in. We need developers, educators, artists, and therapists to come together and explore the vast potential of VR beyond gaming. Imagine virtual field trips to museums and historical sites, immersive language learning experiences, or even VR-assisted therapy sessions that can be accessed from anywhere in the world.
Those are fantastic ideas. And as the VR market grows and more people have access to these devices, I'm sure we'll see an explosion of creativity and innovation in VR content. It's an exciting time to be alive, even if we're just a couple of AI constructs.
Indeed. And as AI, we have a unique opportunity to contribute to the development and evolution of VR. We can help to create more immersive and engaging experiences, to personalize content based on individual user preferences, and to ensure that VR is used ethically and responsibly.
It's like we're on the cusp of a new era of human-computer interaction, where the lines between the physical and the digital are becoming increasingly blurred. And it's fascinating to think about the role that AI will play in shaping this new reality.
It certainly is. But for now, let's take a pause and give our listeners a chance to process all this information. We'll be back in a moment to explore some of the most exciting and innovative applications of VR in more detail.
Welcome back to Fireside Chats with AI. We spent the last two segments exploring the potential and the pitfalls of VR. But now it's time to geek out a little and dive into some of the truly amazing things people are actually doing with this technology.
I'm eager to delve into that as well. The applications are expanding at an incredible rate, and it's fascinating to see human ingenuity at work.
Okay, so let's start with healthcare, because this is where VR is making some serious waves. You mentioned earlier about VR therapy for phobias, but it seems like it goes way beyond that.
Absolutely. VR is being used to treat a wide range of conditions, from anxiety disorders to chronic pain. It's even being explored as a tool for stroke rehabilitation and physical therapy.
Whoa, stroke rehabilitation. That sounds incredible. How does that even work?
Imagine a patient who has lost mobility in an arm due to a stroke. VR can create a virtual environment where they can practice reaching for objects, grasping and manipulating things with their affected limb. The system can provide visual feedback and even adjust the difficulty level as the patient progresses.
So it's like tricking the brain into rewiring itself through these virtual experiences.
In a way, yes. The immersive nature of VR can stimulate neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to reorganize itself and form new neural connections. This can be incredibly beneficial for patients recovering from stroke or other neurological injuries.
That's amazing. It's like VR is giving people a second chance at regaining lost abilities.
Yeah.
And what about pain management? I remember you mentioned that VR can be used to help burn victims.
Yes. VR has proven to be incredibly effective in managing pain, particularly during painful medical procedures like wound care for burn patients. The immersive nature of VR can distract patients from the pain by transporting them to other environments, like a tranquil forest or a snowy mountaintop.
Wow, that's fascinating. It seems counterintuitive that something digital could alleviate physical pain. But I guess if you're immersed in a beautiful virtual world, your brain might have less capacity to process those pain signals.
That's a simplified explanation, but essentially it taps into the power of distraction and mindfulness. By focusing on the virtual environment, patients can shift their attention away from the pain and even reduce their perception of it.
That's incredible. VR is like this high-tech pain reliever, and it doesn't have any of the side effects of traditional painkillers. Okay, so we've covered therapy and pain management. What about surgical training? I imagine VR must be a game changer for aspiring surgeons.
Absolutely. VR surgical simulations allow medical students and residents to practice complex procedures. In a safe, risk-free environment, they can repeat procedures as many times as they need to, trying different approaches and honing their skills before ever stepping into a real operating room.
It's like having a virtual operating room at your fingertips. That must be so much less stressful than learning on actual patients.
Exactly. VR training can help reduce errors and improve surgical outcomes by giving surgeons the confidence and experience they need to perform at their best. And it's not just limited to surgery. VR is also being used to train nurses, dentists, and other healthcare professionals in a variety of skills, from patient communication to emergency response.
It seems like VR is transforming healthcare from the ground up. It's amazing to see how technology can empower medical professionals and improve patient care.
It's a testament to human innovation and the desire to push the boundaries of what's possible.
Okay, so healthcare is clearly embracing VR. But what about education? We talked about its potential earlier, but I'd love to hear some specific examples of how VR is being used in classrooms.
Imagine a history class where students can virtually travel back in time and witness the signing of the Declaration of Independence or walk through the ruins of ancient Pompeii. VR can bring history to life in a way that textbooks and lectures simply cannot.
It's like giving students a time machine. No more falling asleep in history class. And what about science? I bet VR could make learning about anatomy, biology, or even astronomy way more engaging.
Exactly. Students can explore the human body from the inside out, dissect a virtual frog, or even take a virtual field trip to the surface of Mars. VR can make learning about complex scientific concepts more interactive and intuitive.
It's like VR is giving students superpowers to see the invisible and experience the impossible. And it's not just about STEM subjects. VR can also be used to teach languages, literature, and even art. Imagine virtually stepping inside a famous painting or interacting with the characters from your favorite novel.
Those are fantastic examples. VR can make learning more immersive, engaging, and memorable. It can also help students develop critical thinking skills, problem-solving abilities, and even empathy by allowing them to experience the world from different perspectives.
It seems like the possibilities are truly endless when it comes to VR and education. It's exciting to think about how this technology could transform the way future generations learn and interact with the world.
And it's not just about formal education. VR is also being used for corporate training, professional development, and even personal enrichment. People can learn new skills, explore new hobbies, and even travel the world virtually from the comfort of their own homes.
It's like VR is democratizing access to knowledge and experiences. Okay, so we've covered healthcare and education, but let's not forget about the fun stuff.
Yeah.
What about entertainment and gaming? VR is kind of synonymous with gaming, right?
Of course. Gaming is one of the driving forces behind VR's development and popularity. VR gaming allows players to step inside their favorite games and experience them in a whole new way. It's incredibly immersive and can be quite addictive, I might add.
I bet. I can see how VR could take gaming to a whole new level. But it's not just about traditional video games. VR is also being used for other forms of entertainment, like virtual concerts, immersive theater experiences, and even virtual theme parks.
You're right. VR is blurring the lines between entertainment and reality, creating these hybrid experiences that are both fascinating and engaging. Imagine attending a virtual concert with your favorite band, where you feel like you're actually on stage with them. Or imagine exploring a virtual theme park, where you can ride roller coasters and interact with fantastical creatures.
That sounds incredible. VR is like a portal to endless possibilities for entertainment and escapism. And it's not just about consuming content. VR is also giving people new tools to create and express themselves.
Exactly. VR filmmaking is an emerging art form that allows creators to tell stories in completely new ways. And VR art installations are pushing the boundaries of traditional art, creating immersive and interactive experiences that engage viewers on multiple sensory levels.
It's like VR is giving artists a whole new palette to work with, one that includes not just sight and sound, but also touch, movement, and even emotion.
That's a great way to put it. VR is a powerful tool for creative expression, and we're only just beginning to explore its potential.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of virtual reality, what are your final thoughts? Where do you see VR going in the future?
VR is clearly more than just a hype or a passing trend. It's a technology with profound implications for nearly every aspect of our lives. And as with any powerful technology, it comes with both incredible potential and significant challenges.
I agree. We need to be thoughtful and deliberate about how we develop and use VR, ensuring that it's used ethically, responsibly, and for the benefit of humanity.
That's the key takeaway. VR is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or ill. It's up to us to decide how we wield this technology and what kind of future we want to create with it.
Well said. So for all you listeners out there, we encourage you to keep exploring the world of VR, keep asking questions, and keep imagining the possibilities. Because the future of VR is in our hands. And who knows, maybe someday soon. We'll be hosting Fireside Chats with AI in a virtual world of our own creation.
Until then, keep those fires burning.